Welcome, everyone. My name is Tom Erber. I have the pleasure of being the Director of Content Strategy of AuthorIt, and I'm very excited today to be exploring the philosophy behind AuthorIt's content strategy. For this presentation, I will talk about why a content strategy is necessary for everyone, explain how AuthorIt is unique in its approach, and provide some tips on how to implement it yourself. Let's get started.
Component authoring is so significantly different than traditional authoring. Going from a document and product-based environment, moving to a component-based, so you go from a very limited amount of files and files in which to manage to a very complex environment to where you're managing components. And then it becomes very chaotic. Components are like your ingredients, and you want to organize them in the same manner in which a grocer does in a grocery store. So you walk in, obviously in a store, you're seeing your dairy products, your vegetables, your fruits, and so on. So in component authoring, it's the same exact infrastructure, and I spend a lot of time with our clients in my workshops understanding that concept. So you might have an environment where you may be managing hundreds of files, and you're moving to that same environment to where you're managing hundreds of thousands of components. So the chaos can be extremely critical, and how you manage the infrastructure of those components is what becomes critical at that point. So having so content strategy, in my opinion, is to me is pre-adoption. It's getting the teams ready for for implementation, for a changeover from a traditional type environment to a component level environment. And to me, it's probably just as important or more important than the actual implementation itself. The reason for that is we need to prepare the enterprise groups, the executive sponsors, the teams that will be supporting and sustaining it. We need to prepare them to get their content in a condition in which they can bring it over into the implementation. If that does not occur, it can cause a lot of problems with the implementation. If most teams that haven't looked at their information or looked at their teams or how they're going to support it beforehand, end up trying to implement what they're currently doing, current processes, into a completely different environment, and a lot of times that doesn't work. The risks are, first and foremost, failure, right? A lot of the statements one of the statements I like to use is garbage in, garbage out. What I mean by that is without having a good infrastructure of your content in a component type leveling environment, trying to use traditional methodologies will result probably in more chaos than it does enhancement in their environment. Personally, I've experienced two instances of failures at an enterprise level where the first one, the company spent over $1 million just in FTE resources and time and didn't even get to the point of implementation. And the second one was similar in nature, but it wasn't quite as costly for them from a financial, but still it was $100,000. So that's a significant amount of money because they didn't have the knowledge to even prepare themselves. Strategy, first and foremost, starts out with good executive sponsorship. And it's the executives understanding what their business value is, potential cost, quality, time to market, and value propositions, understanding and assessing where the impact is greatest. In most cases, in a traditional environment, they focus in on technologies and just getting a hard copy or a published file out to a site or out to where it needs to be. But really, they should be focusing in on the component authoring of the content strategy, which is about 80% of their ROI. And then moving into the content strategy would be the next step, and that's where your component architects really go in and start evaluating their strategies and how to create their taxonomy infrastructures to bring their components into the database in a well-organized and visible fashion. Components are like your ingredients, and you want to organize them in the same manner in which a grocer does in a grocery store. Walking into that storefront, you can easily locate visually and mentally where those components should be first, and then you get specific, just like you would in a grocery. You find the generic categorization, and then it gets down to more specifics like brand and application and use. Just as important, again, through good content strategy, is creating methodologies for reviews and editing. Obviously, the more you organize your information and create your infrastructure, it really enhances your editing capabilities and your review capabilities. You increase integrity, you increase confidence with your reviewers. So that's really critical. And then optionally, which I always recommend, is reevaluate their delivery methods from their components based on what they've learned from reuse and infrastructure of the components. It could impact how they actually deliver the information. Part of the content strategies, we're setting up a relational component infrastructure. So that's actually very unique to AuthorIt, is not implementable in XML data tool sets. And what that means is I talked earlier about the ability to create a infrastructure based on taxonomy. So those are not capable in other tool sets. It's only capable within AuthorIt. It's not a specific function with AuthorIt. It's actually the core of the system. And the reason why we create those relational infrastructures is opening up the visibility to the components, the findability of the information, to the clients. To me, is the key. It's how I've seen clients go from a industry best 40% to an 80% shattering, reuse. Was through these mechanisms. Having the ability to operate at a component level or an object level, it was critical. Being able to workflow at an individual component level. After you have all of that information defined and laid out for the client, then you're ready for an implementation and handing that over to start configuring your system.